get started, I will be talking about history of tea, what tea plant is. I have one right here because I actually have several tea plants on my balcony here in Pittsburgh, and we're trying to see if they will survive winter. This one is doing pretty well, as you see. I'm going also to talk about growing regions and how tea is processed, that eventually we have various types of tea, even though they come from exactly the same plant, Camellia sinensis. So a white, green, oolong, black. There's a couple other types of tea, but I will be mostly focusing on these four today. Those are all from the same plant, and the name of the plant is Camellia sinensis. And we have people who got tasting kits at home. Get your stuff ready, because we're going to actually start from brewing tea. Some of the teas are going to take longer to steep, so I would like to get them already started. The kits have green tea called Lucky Dragon Haisang. It's a green tea from China. They have white tea called Pai Mutan, aka white peony. Milk oolong, rooibos, which is not a tea, it's a herb. Pittsburgh breakfast, which is our take on English breakfast, strong but smooth, and fruit tea called Last Mango in Paris. Everybody also has these people that order tea sets, tea tasting sets. They have these tea infusers. So how about we just start from brewing one of those teas? We're going to actually start with black tea. Black tea, Pittsburgh breakfast. These are very easy to use tea filters. They're biodegradable, compostable. So let's take a mug. I hope you have one ready. Open one of these bags, and you should have a teaspoon, or maybe you have a tea measure. We're going to measure 2 teaspoons of loose leaf tea. No more, no less. Unless you're using teacup or a teapot, then you have to adjust number of teaspoons, amount of tea. But generally it's about 2 teaspoons. My first teaspoon was kind of small, so I'm going to add some. So this is a black tea, and we're going to steep right now. It's called Pittsburgh breakfast. For black tea, recommended water temperature is boiling, as hot as possible. And I'm using electric kettles because they are so easy to use. They do not overboil water. They shut off automatically. You can adjust the temperature. Many of them come with the temperature control, which is, believe me, really, really good thing to have. It's really good to have a kettle like this. There's other ways of measuring water temperature, but if you have one of these, and they're pretty widely available. We usually have some of them in stock, but right now we're sold out. I apologize for that. And we are steeping black tea for 4 minutes. 4 minutes. There we go. Let it steep. And if you steep, so we're steeping 212, which is pretty much boiling, or 100%, 100 degrees Celsius, and recommended steeping time for black tea is 4 minutes. Okay. How did it all start? How has it all started? It was so long ago, believe it or not, but tea was supposedly discovered as long ago as almost 5,000 years in China by Emperor Shennong, who was an avid botanist, and he liked to discover many plants, and he also tasted them. And one of the plants was tea plant, which of course they didn't have a name yet for that. He supposedly, Emperor Shennong was resting in his garden, and a leaf from a nearby bush fell in a cup of hot water near him. He tried it, he liked it, and he sent servants for more. And then for many, many years, nothing happened. I mean, tea was only consumed in China. Then Japanese monks came, and they were very intrigued with this beverage that was, you know, invigorating, keeping them awake. And so they brought some tea to Japan, and they started cultivating it there as well. That was not until the beginning of the 9th century. Tea arrived to Europe much, much later, in mid 16th century, and it was brought to Europe by Portuguese. Portuguese were the only country who had trading rights with China at that time through the port of Macau. And from Portugal, eventually the custom of tea drinking and tea trade spread it out to other European countries. England was actually one of the last countries to start drinking tea. It wasn't really until like mid-17th century and even later, but one of the 3 women in England who contributed to increased tea drinking was Catarina de Bragança, Portuguese princess who married Charles II, and she brought tea chest with her, and she made tea drinking custom popular in the royal court, and eventually more and more people started drinking tea. The tea was also popular in Russia. Tea was brought to Russia on a caravan, sometimes from China. Sometimes a trip like this took several months, almost a year or longer. And by the time tea got to Moscow, it was usually, it had like a smoky taste. That was due to the fact that it took so long to bring tea to the destination, and every night there was a campfire, and the smoke from campfire was permeating bags with tea, sacks with tea, and I guess Russians thought that, oh, this is how tea should taste like. And it became pretty popular, and it still is. We do sell smoky teas, and there's many customers who love them. One of them is called Lapsang Souchong, and we also have tea called Russian Caravan. Oh, my black tea is almost ready. 4 minutes passed. How you guys doing? Did you brew your tea yet? I'll be taking it easy, so you will have time to brew. Oh, look at that beautiful color. Look at that. So, you see, I removed that tea 4 minutes after steeping. If I left that tea inside the cup, inside the mug, it would be very bitter. There's absolutely no need to steep black tea longer than 4 minutes. Many people make a mistake of not using enough tea. If you use too little tea and then you try to steep it because you're trying to extract it as much as possible, make it look dark, that's not the way to go. I won't drink it yet, and I don't want you to drink your tea at home. Just let it cool off a little bit. The best tasting temperature is approximately 140, 150 degrees. If it's too hot, you don't get that, sensation. You basically just burn your taste buds. So let's just wait a little bit. How is black tea made? Well, first off, the leaves are picked, and they usually pick only 2 top leaves and a bud. 2 top leaves and a bud. Rarely, 3rd and 4th leaf might be used too. That's in case of oolongs, tea Kuan Yin. But majority of teas are made from just 2 top leaves and a bud. After harvesting, the tea leaves are withered, either outdoors or indoors. By withering, they become a little more pliable, and then they oxidize them. Oxidation is what makes, the degree of oxidation is what makes teas green, black, oolong, or white. It's just as simple as that, and there's different ways of doing it. In case of black tea, after withering, tea will be processed mechanically by shaking tea leaves. Sometimes it's done by hand on trays, or it could be done on the conveyor belt. By shaking and also twisting, rolling tea leaves, they become bruised, and that bruising is causing them to release enzymes which cause oxidation, which basically means aging. When you see leaves in fall, you know how they become yellow, reddish, and then eventually brown, shriveled. The same thing happens to tea leaves in processing of the black tea, except that the process is accelerated by hand, by human, but you know what I mean, by special processing. So that was the black tea, and people who love black tea, which is also myself, why do we like black tea? Because it has a strong flavor and full body. I particularly like Benifuki. This is my favorite tea. It's unusual tea. It's actually from Japan, because as you know, Japan is mostly known for green teas, but I love Benifuki. I also like Earl Grey. Earl Grey is, I'm just going to throw this very quickly, it's not pure tea, it's a tea with added flavor. Oil of bergamot. Bergamot is a citrus plant from Mediterranean region. And I'm sure most of you probably had, you know, Earl Grey. So we have white tea, and we're going to let it cool off a little more. Let's make white tea, and I will talk about white tea while we're making white tea. As you see, white tea is not rolled. It has pretty large leaves, because in processing of the white tea, they're trying to preserve the leaf in as unchanged form as possible. So there's no twisting, no rolling. There's usually just a tiny little bit of withering. And sometimes they do it very gently indoors because they don't want to expose leaves to sun, air, wind. So just a tiny little bit of oxidation, and leaves, as I said, are preserved in a large size. They're pretty large size because they're done. Try not to cut them, twist them, roll them. Just pick them up and drink. And for that, I will be using, actually, okay, let's do white tea, and then I'm going to make oolong, because the oolong is steeped in a very similar way as white tea. This, so you guys have Pai Mutan, aka white peony, in your tea tasting sets, and you will be also using teaspoons of tea in case you are using average size mug. If you're using teacup, which is only 5, maybe 6 ounces, then you use 1 teaspoon. If you use a mug, which is usually 12 to 14 ounces, this is American cup, then you use approximately, actually with white tea you have to go up a little bit more because it's more fluffy. And I'm going to suggest at least 3 teaspoons, 2, 3. I'm gonna throw this over here. It's really good to have a tea scale. If you want to explore tea more and venture into these very rare, unusual teas with a specific tea steeping protocols, then you might want to get yourself a scale, a gram scale. However, in this session, I'm just covering like basics of tea and tea steeping, so teaspoon or tea measure is enough to have. This is a white tea from the same plant, not from this plant, but you know what I mean. And the water should be 100. I'm going to show you this. 190 degrees, and steeping time is 3 minutes. 190 degrees in 3 minutes. You can use beverage thermometer. These are just a little smaller, but also you can use any kitchen thermometer for checking the water temperature. I usually wait about 2 minutes. You can just open the kettle and wait about 2 minutes. The other method is to pour water into 1 cup and then transfer it to another cup. By pouring water into one vessel, you already decrease temperature by several degrees. But don't go too low, because white tea or oolong are not going to steep well if the temperature is too low. So 190 and about 3 minutes. Some people like to steep their tea less, 2 minutes. It depends how sensitive your taste buds are. These bags, as you see, they seal with moisture, just like that, so they're not going to open up. Some people like to hang them on the side, or just throw them in. So this will be 3 minutes. There we go. Tea number 2, white tea, Pai Mutan, aka white peony. 190 degrees, 3 minutes. Tea plant likes tropical, mostly actually subtropical climate, pretty hot weather and humid. However, many tea plants can grow in cooler conditions, like for example in Darjeeling, in foothills of Himalayas, or in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which is 5B zone. But they also need quite a bit of like humidity in the air, and they like good bit of drainage. So they like water, they like to be quite a bit of rain, but their soil should have a good drainage, so they don't sit in water. They cannot grow in a swamp, for example. They have to be, the water should just nourish, get to roots, but then drain away. And if you ever have plants, I did a class on tea growing, so if you guys are interested, just check it out. It's on Facebook. You can just kind of go back and see that video from, I think I did it like 3 months ago. White tea steeping nicely. You see the color is going to be very light. Okay, so go back to the tea plant. Warm, humid, good water drainage, like loamy soil, for those of you who know what it is. And countries that grow tea are usually such as India, China, Japan, Sri Lanka. Recently, a lot of African countries are growing tea as well, like Kenya, Malawi, Zimbabwe, and believe it or not, there are single tea farms all over the world. Even here in US, we have, for example, Charleston Tea Garden, and also Great Mississippi Tea Company. We actually sell teas from there, and I was fortunate that to visit both of them, but we were just at Great Mississippi Company this past October, and it was an amazing trip. We also visited another tea farm in Louisiana, Fleur de Lis, and this plant is actually from them. I was given that plant. So we finished. I hope you guys are catching up with me. Steeping of the white tea, and as you see, this is very light. It could be darker, but this tea, believe it or not, even though it's much lighter than the black tea, it has about the same amount of caffeine as black tea, and I'll talk about caffeine content in a couple of minutes. So we have black tea and white tea. They're both from the same type of plant. Are we ready for this next tea? And since it's similar temperature and timing as white tea, I will make milk oolong. Oolong tea is somewhere between black and green in terms of oxidation. So oolong tea can be oxidized as little as 20%, and then it looks, smells, and tastes similar to green tea, but it's going to be more mellow, more round. And also what's nice about oolongs can be steeped probably 2-3 times the same amount, the same leaves you can re-steep a few times, sometimes several times. This particular oolong has wonderful creamy milky aroma, and I'm hoping you are all going to like it. So I'm making another bag. Oh, you can of course use tea infusers, and I will show you some later, but just to make it faster, I'm going to use those tea bags. So we're making 2 teaspoons. A little more here per mug. And I have another kettle here, and this one is at 190. Oops, that's okay. It will seal. And we are going to set up timer for 3 minutes. Let me tell you a little more about tea plant itself. So it's an evergreen shrub that can grow into a tree. It can grow as not very high, like maybe 20 feet, 25 feet high, but those trees are super old. There's some of those really old tea trees in Yunnan, in China. Tea plant, Camellia sinensis, has 2 main subtypes. One of them is Camellia sinensis, which means Chinese Camellia subtype Chinese, and the other one is Camellia sinensis assamica, subtype assamica. Camellia sinensis originally comes from China, while assamica comes from India. Generally, sinensis, subtype sinensis is better. It has softer leaves. They're more pleasant in taste. But assamica is more hardy, and it can grow in harsher climates. However, the leaves are a little thicker. They're not as shiny, not as soft, and however, in many areas, they actually make hybrids. They cross plants in a way that is the most suitable for this particular climate. And so you have 2 main subtypes. There's a couple others, but these are like majority of the plants. but there's also many hybrids, and we actually call them cultivars. So for example, the Gwanja milk oolong that you had in your package is a specific cultivar that they were actually able to develop this wonderful tea with this creamy kind of buttery aroma and taste. Okay, steeping my oolong here. And you see the color is even lighter than the white tea because it was a lighter type oolong. If I steeped oolong, darker oolong, that is about 80% oxidized or 70, like Formosa oolong or Da Hong Pao, Big Red Robe, it would be almost as dark as black tea. Let's talk a little bit about processing of the green tea. I'm going to wait a little bit with making green tea because I want you guys to listen to what I say without getting distracted. After picking the leaves, leaves will be subjected to heat immediately, as soon as possible. The reason for that is the heat is applied to tea leaves to prevent oxidation, to prevent them from getting that air oxidation. And heat stops those enzymatic changes. It's a similar process as with an apple. Let's say if we cut an apple and leave it on the counter, it's gonna get what? Brown, and that's oxidation. If you place an apple in the oven and bake it, it's going to remain light. So the same thing happens with tea. When they process tea into green tea type, they're trying to prevent oxidation. They're actually trying to prevent this tea from turning into black tea. And oolong is somewhere in between, so they will do a little bit of oxidation and then stop, apply a little bit of heat, and then the tea master will decide whether it's oxidized enough. If not, they're going to resume the oxidation, like in processing of the black tea, and stop. Processing of oolong teas is not easy. They're usually a little more expensive, and there are some oolongs that can be pretty expensive, but they're delightful. And oolong tea is very, like I say, you can brew 3, 4, sometimes 5 cups from the same leaves. And oolong, just to remind, is pretty much, this is sort of like my way of doing it. I know there's different schools on that, but I found that this is the way that I like the most. So both white tea and oolong should be steeped in the water a little cooler than boiling at about 190 degrees and for about 3 minutes. I told you about the plant, about geography, a little bit about the processing of the tea leaves. It's all about real tea from a real tea plant, Camellia sinensis. The next tea I will be making here is a green tea, and this one will require also 2 teaspoons of dry tea leaves per mug, like this. The only tea that we went up a little bit on was the white tea, because it's more fluffy, so you need to up the amount of teaspoons to approximately 3 or even more. And the green tea I will be brewing today is Lucky Dragon Hyson, a wonderful, very mellow, not so grassy tea from China. Here we go. 1 teaspoon, 2 teaspoons, and the water for green tea should be only about 180 degrees, at 180 degrees, and the steeping time is 2 minutes. 2 minutes, and this is like probably the most important information I'm going to give you today. I hope you're going to remember this. The steeping time is 2 minutes. If you steep your green tea longer than 2 minutes, it's gonna taste bitter. It's gonna taste really pungent, bitter, and all the goodies in it are dissolved in the first minute or so. So by steeping longer, you're not gaining anything other than the bad taste. Here you go. And the timer. 2 minutes start. $180, and we steep for 2 minutes. 2 minutes. How do we store tea? The best way to store is in a opaque container. And you tried, can I have some end containers? And if you can keep it in the original bag, like where you purchased it. Like from us, we'll either give you like a plastic tubby or paper bag with a liner. But if you're buying, especially if you're buying more tea, or if you have very many teas, it's really good to have airtight container, and containers should match the amount of tea. You don't want to use container that's too big, because excessive air inside the container will damage the tea. It's not gonna damage, but especially with those better quality, high grade teas, you want to preserve them in the best way possible. And don't keep your tea in the refrigerator. Many people think that it's the best way to store tea, but that's not good, because it's there's moisture in the fridge, and every time you put tea in and take it out, it creates condensation. So just keep it in the dark, cool place. Kitchen is okay as long as it's not close to stove or something that exudes some kind of strong flavor. These are 4 ounces. These here hold 2 ounces, and many people ask, how much tea should I buy? And this is 4 ounces is a good amount. Most people will buy, whoops, yes, I have to finish steeping, because otherwise it will be bitter. It's beautiful jade color infusion. Like I said, I haven't tasted them yet, so please don't do it yet. Just wait until they cool off a little more. So going back to storage, like I said, airtight container, or if you have vacuum containers, that's even better. You can keep them in the jar too, but make sure they're away from light. And don't store your teas in the refrigerator. 4 ounces of tea, it's an average amount that people usually buy, and it makes about 20-25 mugs of tea, or about 40-50 cups of tea. If you're just tasting tea, if you just want to sample, or you have many teas, 2 ounces, this tin holds about 2 ounces. 2 ounces will make about 10-12 mugs of tea, or 20-25 teacups. This was about storing. I have 4 teas. I hope you have them too. Let's talk a little bit about non-teas. The other 2 teas that were in your kit, in your tea tasting kit, are Rooibos, 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 and tea called Last Mango in Paris. And I use word tea as a nickname because they're not from a real tea plant. These are, Rooibos is like a special herb, type of herb that grows in South Africa. And it's, like I said, it spells Rooibos. A very good substitute for tea for people who don't want to have any caffeine. A lot of health benefits, a lot of antioxidants, and it blends really well with flavors. And the one that I will be brewing and drinking today is creme au caramel, caramel rooibos. So this, let's brew it. Now I am actually going to wait a little bit because I want to heat up my water. Okay. The water temperature for herbs, tisanes, which means other botanicals, not Camellia sinensis, such as chamomile, hibiscus, peppermint, blends of fruits or other herbs, tisanes, as we call them. We recommend hot water 212, boiling like for black tea, and steeping time 6 minutes or even longer. They're not going to oversteep, so you're safe here. Okay, the water is boiling, and I'm going to measure 2 teaspoons of creme au caramel rooibos. 1. I love rooibos, especially around holidays, because we get a lot of teas from Germany. Those are tea bags, but a lot of them are based on rooibos. It's very popular there. Here we go. I'm going to take it slowly so everybody has time to brew their own rooibos. And at the same time, I will be making Last Mango in Paris, which is just a blend of fruits. There's no caffeine in it. And because timing is not as important, we can steep rooibos for a minute longer or so. It's going to be just fine. Okay. One more cup. Let's do this here. There we go. I will set up timer for 6 minutes. That will be nice. Look at this beautiful color. Do you know why this fruit infusion, Last Mango in Paris, has color like that? Because it has hibiscus in it. Hibiscus not only is adding a wonderful kind of tangy taste to teas, but also creates this beautiful purple ruby color. And this is rooibos. It's more kind of burnt orange color, but as you will see in a few minutes, it's going to look almost the same as black tea infusion. So I'm going to do this. Once again, tisanes, which either herbs, fruit, blends, they can take hot water and also long steeping time, 6 minutes or more. Let me see. There's a couple other types of tea that I would like to mention. One of them is called pu'er tea, P-U-E-R-H. It's aged tea, usually pressed into a cake like this, like a disc, or it could look like this, which is a tea brick. And those teas often are specifically aged. Actually, they can be aged naturally over extended period of time, many years, in humid, dark environment, kind of just like with wines, cheeses, or they can be processed in a faster way, and then, so there's 2 main types of pu'er, but I'm not going to get into this in more detail today. I just thought I'll show you this. It's a pretty interesting form of tea. Pu'er teas are very mellow. The older, the milder they get, the more sublime taste. Very appreciated by tea connoisseurs all around the world. Also, they can be pretty pricey. some people have a collection of those. And the other type of tea that I would like to mention today is ground tea called matcha. It's basically from was developed in Japan very long time ago. I begin even in, I think it started in, as soon as monks brought tea from China and started cultivating in Japan, they developed this method of grinding tea. This form of tea was also used in China, but not as popular as in Japan. And to brew matcha, you basically just use about 2/4 teaspoons. So you, whoops. Okay, we're done here. This is rooibos, caramel, and this is last mango in Paris. So as the name indicates, it has a mango flavor. Let me finish talking about matcha powder tea, which is very popular these days, and people always want to know how to use it because it's not your average tea leaf. You use about half a teaspoon, so only about 1/4 of what you would normally use with other leaf teas. And you add only about 3 ounces of, and then you whisk. You create like a frothy drink and sip. And matcha can also be used as add-on to smoothies. You can make cookies with matcha. You can make matcha lattes. If you're interested to learn more about matcha, please check out my video about matcha. Okay. So this is now, I'm getting into the tasting tasting section, and I want you guys to do the same thing. So we'll be drinking tea and trying to figure out what it tastes like and whether we like it or not, and whether it was steeped properly. We're going to start with the lightest, and this will be the white tea. So you see, it's very light in color, like absolutely not a regular tea. It doesn't look like black tea. And in order to enjoy it and have a better perception of tea, it's very important to actually inhale the aroma of this tea. After you take a sip, swallow and then exhale with your mouth closed. That will allow tea to get to our olfactory receptors in the back of the throat and in the nose. Ah, delightful. Don't be put off by light flavor. Usually people who drink black tea, a lot of times they have a hard time with switching or, tasting anything at all in a white tea. But the more you drink it and the more mindful you do it, the better you get. So your taste buds actually can be trained to detect notes in lighter teas as well. It is a little too cold right now for full perception, but usually when you're making tea tasting at home, you might want to stick to maybe 2 or 3 teas at a time. Next will be, let's do the green tea. The green tea I was using is called Lucky Dragon Hyson from China. And it has a little more kind of like, I don't like to use the word grassy because it brings bad association, but let's say fresh leaves, freshly cut hay, with a lot of also floral. You can actually taste a lot of floral notes in well-brewed, properly brewed green tea. I actually taste a little bit of apricot in it. I was, in the beginning when I started drinking green tea, and especially with the improper steeping, all I was tasting was kind of grassy beverage. But like I said, the more you do it, and if you do it properly, that green tea can be delightful. What do you think? It's definitely more intense than the white tea. We should probably, I should have probably asked you to bring some water to rinse your palate between tea tastings, but it's okay. We can do it without, but it would be a good idea for if you do your next tea tasting at home, if you taste several teas, to have a little bit of water on hand for rinsing your mouth. Right now, I'm tasting Guangzhou Milk Oolong. So I tried the white tea, Pai Mo Tan, which was made by not processing leaves almost at all. Just, barely, just leaves are preserved in the as fresh and unchanged form as possible. The next tea was a green tea, which was, the leaves were heated in order to stop oxidation, stop aging, so that tea was also preserved in a fresh form, but the notes are more intense than in the white tea. And this is oolong. And this is a real treat. I hope you guys who got this in your kids, you enjoy it as much as I do. So this particular oolong has buttery, creamy notes, and it also has slightly different texture. It is also creamy. It's sort of like drinking tea with, it will come to me, but as you notice, the texture is also creamy. A real delight. So that was oolong. However, regular oolong will have slightly less. It won't be as creamy as this one, but regardless, it's also delightful. And there's many people who love oolong teas. They won't drink anything else but oolong. And oolong is interesting because of the various degrees of oxidation. So there's many different variations of oolong. Black tea, Pittsburgh breakfast. I'm a lover of black tea. This is our own blend, Pittsburgh breakfast. And it's a little too cool right now to drink, but I hope yours is a little hotter than mine. So as you taste it, and I hope you have the same perception as I, this tea is very smooth. There's no astringency, but at the same time it gives a really nice satisfying body. It has satisfying body and strong taste. There's a tiny little bit of astringency, but not bitterness. But that astringency is actually a desired effect of the black tea. It just gives us a little more sensation. Very good. I'm very proud of myself. I hope you guys did a good job too with steeping. And then we're moving on to, let's try rooibos, caramel. You can also try regular rooibos, but the reason why we placed caramel rooibos in your kids is to show you how well rooibos can blend with other flavors. It's absolutely wonderful herb to blend with other flavors. Yes, it's definitely caramel. This tea, rooibos, is great to drink at any time of day and night because it doesn't have any caffeine. Before I drink last mango in Paris, I want to tell you a few words about caffeine content because this is always I get a lot of this question, and there's a lot of confusion about caffeine in tea. So Camellia sinensis, has caffeine in it. Leaves have caffeine in them. However, and actually the reason for that is to deter pests, and because they don't like caffeine. And in fact, the younger the leaves, the smaller the leaves, the more caffeine in them. But the differences are not very remarkable. And the same with types of tea. because they come from the same plant, white, green, oolong, black, pu'er, all these teas are going to have about this very similar caffeine content, which is about 1/3 of caffeine of coffee. There is another ingredient in tea. It's called L-theanine. It's an amino acid. L-theanine counteracts in a way harshness of the caffeine. It stimulates brain wave activity in our brain, and it actually makes us happy. So combination of L-theanine and caffeine basically is giving us this state of mindful alertness. However, just keep in mind that there is caffeine, it's not a whole lot, but if you drink tea at night, even if it looks like this, it still has some caffeine in it, and you might have a hard time sleeping. This is a cup of non-tea. It's herbal infusion or fruit infusion. You can call it both ways, last mango in Paris. It's delightful. You can also use this tea as a dessert. I was just talking about this in the diet tea class. There's a lot of teas and herbs that can be used in place of dessert, mostly the ones that have nutty, caramely, fruity flavors. This is also caffeine-free, and it is sweet, very fruity, of course, and a lot of mango flavor going through, and also a little bit of tartness from hibiscus. Perfect combination. Let me separate these teas. So these are teas: white, green, oolong, black, all from the same plant. These two are not from this plant. This one is from a plant called rooibos or Asphallatus linearis, and this is infusion made with blend of fruits. Regarding steeping, of course, there's many various ways of steeping tea. I used tea filters today because that was the easiest way to make tea. However, if you're interested, most people, of course, have either metal tea infusers or some other, maybe a teapot like this with infuser basket already in it. The bigger the basket, the better, because leaves have more room to open up, so you get a better brew. And this is one of my favorites. It's called Brew in Mug Infuser, so it's basically a metal mesh basket. This is, of course, you can use basic tea ball, but that's good only for maybe green tea and black tea. It's not gonna work with white tea or herbs. This one has a cat on it. You can use this type of infuser with the spring. They come in different sizes. This is nice big size. Cute little trinkets attached. This is a sloth. We have unicorn, bee. It's a lot of fun with those. You can have different infuser for different teas. This is a gorilla, a duck. Oops, duck. It actually is a floating duck. And this is not infuser. This is a strainer, ladies and gentlemen. Do not use this gadget to steep tea. This is used for only when tea is made already in a teapot, leaves and water together, and after steeping, you pour your tea into a cup, and this is used as a strainer to catch leaves. Do not steep, do not infuse tea with this. And depending on, a lot of people ask, what is the best teapot? It's up to you. depending on how you like your tea. I love glass because I can see the color of tea, so I would usually opt for glass teapot. I also like clay teapots. One of them is called Brown Betty. They come from England. Unfortunately, we're sold out on those right now, but I know some of you have them. Cast iron, Tetsubin, great, very durable, keeps tea hot for a long time. And this is an example of Yixing teapot, Yixing Zisha, made from a special clay from China. And these are used for for Chinese tea ceremony. They're usually very small, and the cups are very small, because in their way of drinking tea, small amounts of tea but frequent servings are being offered, and this way they have fresh tea all the time. The one last, let me talk just a little bit about health benefits. And as you probably know, the main health benefit of tea is enormous amount of antioxidants, especially in green tea. White tea also has a lot of antioxidants, but it's usually more expensive. And because it's so bulky, we tend not to use enough tea in our cup. Well, green tea is not as bulky, and once you measure those 2 teaspoons, you have enough tea to make a good cup and with a lot of health benefits. And it's also less expensive. So black tea also has antioxidants, and oolong has antioxidants, but not as much as green tea. And the other health benefits, tea is supposed to boost your immune system. It helps with cardiovascular health, and it's, like I said, it's a great mood enhancer because of that L-theanine content, but at the same time it gives you energy because it has a little bit of caffeine. And every day they find something new, but like I said, the most important health benefit of tea is a very high level of antioxidants, polyphenols, and it's very pleasurable. Just making tea, inhaling the aroma, listening to the kettle chirping. Those don't chirp, but it's still very pleasant. Inhaling the aroma, taking time. It's a different way of life. It's a tea way. So tea, and also the more tea you drink, you probably drink less of other not so healthy beverages like sodas or coffee. So this is a very, very good way of hydration. I would like to tell you how to make iced tea. It's very easy. And I know a lot of people in this country love iced tea. All you do is make it the same way as hot tea. I will be using a mug, but you can use larger pitcher as long as it's heat proof. There's 2 ways, well, there's several ways of making iced tea, but one is a hot method and one is a cold method. So let's do the hot method. I'm going to use Pittsburgh breakfast, but my favorite iced tea is actually cherry black tea. If I can find it. So let's do the same amount, 2 teaspoons. And we're going to steep just like hot tea. So black tea, hot water, and 4 minutes steeping time. But we're going to use less water. We are just going to fill it up halfway. Okay. 4 minutes steeping. Yeah, don't over steep, don't under steep. Steep it exactly like hot tea, like if you were making hot tea. And a couple words about, while I'm steeping this, I want to say a few words about water. Water should be of good quality. The best water is spring water. Do not use distilled water because it has no minerals. Too much minerals in water is also not great, but if you don't have any minerals in the water, it's gonna taste like nothing. And tap water is usually okay as long as there's no chlorine, strong chlorine odor, or if it, of course, has to be safe for drinking. But water can really change the taste of tea. And for example, in Scotland, they developed a different blend, which is specifically designed for water in Scotland, and depending on the mineral content. And I talked about this in one of the classes. In fact, I'm getting ready to do Tea 102, Advanced Tea class, probably next month. That class will be more focused on tea tasting, on a proper tea tasting technique, and anything to do with making the best tea possible. And also I will be presenting more unusual teas, rare teas, other than teas, regular black, green, oolong. So tune in for that, and I'll be talking about the quality of water for tea as well. So this is steeping, steeping, steeping. Let's say 4 minutes already passed. So we have half cup. Basically, I made a double strength. And all you have to do is pour it over, picture another mug tumbler filled with ice. This, there was more ice in it in the beginning of the class, but this is how you make iced tea using hot tea. You can also make a cold brew by placing tea in regular amount, a regular proportion in either a travel mug or a pitcher, and keep it like steeped in the fridge overnight. Or yeah, you might want to keep it in a cooler environment, not the room temperature. Don't make sand tea. Sand tea supposedly is not the best because the temperature may promote growth of bacteria in it. So for cold steeping, use cold temperature like in your fridge. So Kathy was asking, how does the milk oolong get the milky taste? And it's a special cultivar. It's basically, they used different plants and they hybridized them and eventually came up with a special cultivar. They watch out, because there is some teas out there, so-called fake milk oolongs, where they actually add a specific flavor to it. But the true milk oolong is supposed to be natural, all natural. There's nothing added to it. So it's thanks to specific genetics of the plant. And Paula, would it make sense to keep the tea in an airtight bag that you can remove the air from? Yes, of course. Oh, she has a machine. Great. Yeah, it might be too extreme, but you know, Paula, if you have really high quality, especially like that little more pricey tea, that would be probably a good idea to remove air. And yeah, you can buy those sealers pretty much in all department stores now, or Amazon. She likes rooibos. How long can pour be stored and still be good? Are there small pieces? Those large, beautiful decorated bricks would last me a very long time. Yes, they come in. For example, you can buy the pour tea in. This is example of pour teas. Oh, I have one open here. Inside the mandarin shell, and we also have loose leaf pour too. So no worries, you can drink pour without buying a whole brick or a cake. And of course there's several other little shapes. They come in the small shapes, and they also come in little mini bricks. We have, unfortunately, we're running out of this, but you can show to the camera how little. Whoops, they won't see it. Okay, this is a mini brick, and it's wonderful. It's called what? What's the name of it? Haiwan mini brick.
Hawaiian.
No, it's not Hawaiian. Haiwan. And that makes one serving, and you can re-steep them many, many, many times. Thank you so much for watching. I know a lot of people don't like to participate, make comments, and also some of you who don't have Facebook account, you probably cannot comment. You can watch. So, like I said, if you have any tea questions, email Margaret to 100teacups@gmail.com. 100teacups@gmail.com. If you come here to our shop, myself and our staff here, we're always helpful and can answer a lot of questions. Thank you, Kathy. We are next Saturday. It's going to be a repeat of the same class, so there won't be any other class, any other Tea Saturday live session. And then the next Tea Saturday live will be a week after. Thank you so much. Have a great evening. Drink tea and Happy New Year, everyone.